So alright guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to easily repair a wireless Bluetooth keyboard. Now for those of you that already read the title of the video, you should know this keyboard suffers from some slight liquid damage. In my case, the liquid damage in question was chocolate milk. It spilled sometime when I left my house and I got back to it in like an hour, which was not good for the keyboard. But what do we do in a situation like this? Well, first things first, you gotta dry it off as thoroughly as possible, so that's what I did. After I did that, I flipped the keyboard open and opened it up. At this point I left it dry off even further, then I gave it a test since I noticed all the electronics were pretty much bone dry. And I noticed a lot of problems. It was not typing correctly, keys were being held down, and it was just not a fun experience. So what I did from here was, well, you'll see it in the B-roll, I opened it up, took the back off, it was like 12 screws and I used a Phillips 0-bit. I pulled it off and put it off to the side. And from here, we got a nice view of the electronics as well as the keyboard membrane itself. What I ended up doing was I took the 4 screws out, loosened up the hot glue around the battery using some IPA, and I pretty much flipped the board over like so, and disconnected the ribbon cable. From here, I put the electronics out and to the side. Be careful doing this because when I did it, I accidentally pulled the battery negative connector off, well the wire I should say. So I had to go and resolder that back on. And it only went on the other side of the PCB. It would not fit where it originally went. So yeah, be careful when handling the electronics. Besides that, the actual keyboard assembly is pretty basic. You may be wondering why we don't open this up any further. Well, these things are built pretty cheap, and this is just a keyboard membrane assembly, meaning they usually plastic weld these things in place. I figured out the hard way and my space key suffers for it. I'll have to go back in and fix that later, but you cannot separate these two halves. So what we need to do is just do the the more counterintuitive thing. We want to bathe this whole assembly without the electronics attached to it. So you want to fill your sink up, fill your tub up, whatever's easiest. Put the keyboard in for like 10 minutes, pull it out, let it dry. And then I put it back in for another 10 minutes, and after this I sprayed it down with a little bit of IPA to help it dry faster. But if you don't want to do that and you want it to dry a little quicker than normal, just chuck it in the fridge to dry for like 10 minutes. But yeah, with that all said and done, I was left with a sparkling clean keyboard. So what I ended up doing here was I put the PCB back in place and the battery, making sure to be careful when reattaching this ribbon cable to the board. Now I did notice a design flaw with my keyboard at this point in time. The actual proto board, well the board they designed this all around that has the electronics on it, has open pads on the back. If you didn't notice at the start of this video, the back half of my Bluetooth keyboard here is made out of aluminum. So just in case and to protect this delicate circuit board, I decided to put some tape over top of it to help insulate it. But yeah, besides that, I put the battery and the PCB back in place, put the back on temporarily, and flipped it over. From here I turned the keyboard on and gave it a test. I recommend testing this out on a live distro, something you don't really care about if possible, just in case any keys happen to spam that you don't want, and you don't want to accidentally delete something on your computer because of this. However, I was fairly confident that the water bath fixed my problem, so I just fired it up, connected it up to my Steam Deck, and went straight for probably one of the hardest games to use a keyboard with, Kerbal Space Program. And as you can see, everything works great. The only key that had an issue was my space key. But like I said, that's my own fault. I'll have to go through there later and either super glue it in place again or plastic weld it again if possible. Besides that, everything's working great. If you have any other stubborn keys, however, I'll have a quick clip of this on screen. You can easily pop them off with a Phillips head screwdriver. No, a flathead screwdriver, I mean. Pry a thin piece of plastic or a flathead bit under there, pry it, and the key should just come right off. From here you can clean it up even further, or just swap some keys around if you desire. In my particular case, I decided to swap around my control and function keys. I'll have to remap these later in software, but I always hated the position of those two keys on this keyboard. But as you can see, it was fairly easy to pop these keys off, clean them out, and pop them back on. The only key that's a little tricky is the space key because there's 2 metal rods in there, but it's not too much difficult, so I didn't film that for this video. But yeah, with that said, I decided to try a little bit more of a fast-paced game. I opened up some Halo Combat Evolved next and gave a level a run, And as you can see, it works pretty good. The only key that I still have issues with was my space key, but again, that was my own fault. It's not a fault of the liquid damage. All that's been handled and taken care of. But yeah, I tested out every key in that game, and then I hopped onto an even more extensively keyboard-based game, MechWarrior 4. Now, I pretty much tested out all my keyboard combinations in this game. I even opened up a notepad afterwards to test it out even further. However, I beat the level first try with the catapult, and I gotta say, it felt pretty good, so I think this keyboard is 100% fixed. No more stuck keys, no more keys pushing without any reason, and I could finally get back to playing some Kerbal Space Program 1 on my TV. But yeah, I'm gonna leave today's video off here now. DTPK signing off. Peace. If you are wondering, yes, this is how the buggy glitch occurs and how some of the buggies fly off.
The HSS still makes a good party/gag gift that will leave your guests stunned.